Oh yeah, there it is, my first buckle. And everything still hurts. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Dave Dillon from ChaseTheSummit.com, and today I wanted to share my experience at my first 100-mile ultramarathon. That's right, I finished. I did it. Yes. But there's a lot more to the story than that. If you've been following my channel at all, you might know that back in July, I was signed up for another ultramarathon called Vermont 100. That race did not go as planned. I fell apart completely, I got severely dehydrated, and I had to quit by mile 45. It was not a good day for me. This is the moment where I decided I'm gonna drop. This time around, it went a lot better. Before we get into it, make sure you subscribe down below so you don't miss more episodes like this. So the race is called the Midstate Massive. You can see it right there. Why did I choose this race? Well, it was an opportune time for me. I was training for the Vermont 100 and I didn't want to let all that training go to waste. The Vermont 100 was in July and the Midstate Massive took place in October. That amount of time was perfect for me to recover and hit the trails again at the Midstate Massive. I am not a pro, I'm not an elite, I'm just an everyday guy trying to get out there and run a lot. Another cool thing about the Midstate Massive is it's a point-to-point race. So it starts in southern New Hampshire, it travels south along the Midstate Trail, and it finishes right on the border of Connecticut and Rhode Island. And actually at one point on the trail, you are standing in 3 states at the same time. There's not a lot of races out there like this. In total, the race is 100 miles and about 11,000 feet of elevation gain. Something to keep in mind though, is most of this elevation gain happened early in the race within like the first 50 miles. Because Vermont was such an epic failure, I wanted to give myself the best chance of success at the Midstate Massive 100. So I recruited a team. I had my sister Kelly, her fiance Adrian, my good friend Dave, and my wife Jen. And I'm so thankful they were there because they all helped out in their own way. The plan was that Kelly and Adrian would be playing the part of my crew. Dave signed up to pace for 36 miles of this race, which is an ultra in its own right. And my wife Jen finished off the last leg of the race with 12.8 miles. So this whole crew aspect of things is totally new to me. I never had a crew before. And it's funny because my sister, she really wanted to do a good job. So she was like, in your ideal world, what's the perfect crew do? And I really didn't know how to answer that question. Realistically though, all I wanted them to do was have a car full of my stuff and food I liked, and also just smiling faces waiting for me to get there. I mean, who doesn't want people cheering you on, right? This race meant a lot to me. Recovering from Vermont was a mental and physical thing. After Vermont, I was pretty beaten down. I didn't know if 100s were really in the books for me. I didn't know if I had what it takes. The best way I knew how to come back from it was to face it head on and sign up for another 100. Training leading up to this race started back in April, really ramping up my miles again and peaking at about 70 miles a week. The taper period before the race was about 2 weeks long. I did 1 week of very low intensity, but still had my miles up there. And then I did a solid 6 days of nothing, just sitting on the couch, letting my body fully recover for the abuse I was about to give it. The night before the race, I couldn't really sleep. I was tossing and turning. I kept coming downstairs and like fine-tuning my bags and, you know, removing stuff from my vest and adding stuff to my drop bags. I didn't want to leave any stone unturned. For this race, I did utilize a drop bag. The drop bag was important to have the extra layers because in New England in October, we can have temperature swings of, 60 degrees during the day and then drop into the 30s at night. I didn't want to be cold during those night hours because I knew I wouldn't be moving fast. The morning of the race, I got up super early and I had a couple of cups of coffee to get my brain going. Kelly and Adrian came to pick me up at exactly 7:15 a.m. and we started our 1-hour drive to the starting line. When I got to the starting line, I was looking around at all the other runners and what they were wearing. At this point, it was like 40 degrees and raining, and I didn't know how to start the race. I didn't want to have too many layers on that I'd have to tear off quickly, and I'm frantically looking around at all the other runners like, oh, he's wearing pants, he's wearing shorts, he's wearing this, he's wearing that. Ultimately though, I just went bare-legged with a small windbreaker that I could take off quickly once I started moving. I also had a pair of gloves on. The gloves were actually pretty clutch because my hands get cold pretty easily, especially in the rain. And then I just kind of paced around waiting for things to get going. I really just wanted to start moving. Something unique about this race is it was a waved start. So slower runners started earlier in the morning while faster runners start later in the day. and I landed somewhere in the middle. So my race start time started at 9:30 a.m. and I think there were about 20 other runners that started with me. Something interesting at this race is there was a mandatory app for your phone that you had to use for runner tracking. The app was called RaceJoy. This was both for the race directors to track the runners and also for your friends and family to see where you are along the course. This app was actually pretty cool. It would also alert you if you went off course. The downside to this app is that you had to keep your phone charged the entire time of the race, and that can be a challenge. But my crew and pacers found this app super helpful to see exactly where I was on the course and when they could expect me at the next aid station. Okay, so the gun went off at 9:30 and we all hit the trails.
3, 2, 1.
Some of the guys really came out hot. I mean, some of these people looked like they were running a 5K, how fast they came out of the gate. I tried to control myself and back my pace off right off the bat because I knew I would blow out my calves before mile 30 if I gassed it too hard at the beginning. I had a whole pace strategy set up and I made pace charts for my crew and myself, but I knew that was super aggressive and I'd just be backing off of that as I went. For the first like 15 to 20 miles, I was averaging like a 12 to 13 minute pace, and this was very comfortable for me. I didn't feel like I was pushing myself too hard. By aid station 4 or like mile 20, I settled into a pace and I was running with a girl named Kate. Later in the race, she actually ended up winning first place female. Kate was actually super chatty and it was good to have somebody to talk to. At one point, we ran through this like cow farm and there were a bunch of farmers out in the field making sure their cows didn't escape through a fence. And as we approached them, they saw our bib numbers and they typed them into the RaceJoy app and they were like, yeah, Kate and Dave, here they come. They were actually cheering us on and knew our names because of the app. It was really cool. Kate and I continued to run together. She was kind of pushing my pace a little bit. Eat it, got up my leg. Nice work, Dave. She was really taking off. She was going a little too fast for me. Now, this course is super hard to navigate, mainly because they rely heavily on the Midstate trail markers that are already in place on trees and signs. These markers can be really old. They're like small yellow triangles. Sometimes they're faded or they're high up on a tree and they're really hard to see sometimes. The Midstate Trail. So we missed a lot of turns. So thank goodness I had the course loaded on my watch because this course was a bear to navigate, particularly when the sun went down. And I'm not really complaining about this. I think it's actually a feature of the race. You just have to know getting into the Midstate Massive that you got to keep your eyes peeled, and there is definitely some navigation skills involved. So at this point, I was approaching aid station 5. I think that was at like mile 28. Getting a little loopy, guys. Technical section called Crow Hill Ledges. This isn't as technical as it was, but pretty slippery. We are approaching aid station number 5. This was probably my favorite aid station of the entire course. They had tons of food. There's lots of people cheering. Yeah, man, 5 it. Nice job. Hey, how's it going? Aid station 5 was also the first spot where I could access my drop bag. I'm like 30 miles in. I'm feeling awesome. My legs still felt fresh. I was in good spirits. Everything was going well. This is about the point where Kate and I parted ways. She took off down the trail and I just let her go because I couldn't hang with that pace that she was keeping. 5.5 hours in. Not many people out here, so I think I'm near the front of my wave. Things are going pretty good. I'm really trying to dial in my pace. Currently averaging 13:30 pace. So probably is still a little too fast since that would give me like a 22-hour finish time, but I'm sure the terrain ahead will slow me down. After aid station 5, the sun started to set. Things started to get a little bit dark, and not just dark physically, but mentally. This was probably when like my first low point kicked in. The sun was coming down, my pace was slowing down. Luckily, this low point was pretty short-lived. Check out this foliage though. Just beautiful. This is New England in the fall right here. It's pretty. But man, this course is super hard. Oh, here's mile 29. This course is really hard to follow. Like, hard to see the blazes, not a whole lot of signs, and I ended up meeting up with a guy named Pat, another runner. So Pat and I decided to kind of team up. He was running around the same pace I was, and it was getting dark. It was better to be together so we wouldn't miss turns and it would be easier to navigate. Plus 2 headlamps is brighter than 1. This is Pat.
What's up, guys? Having fun.
We're out here at, let's see, what do we got? We're at mile 44.6, and it is pitch black out and super hard to navigate this course. So yeah, only 16 more miles to go. Piece of cake. When the sun finally did set, navigation became really hard. We were missing turns left and right. Pat and I became really punchy at this point. We had both been up for a long time and we'd been running for a while. As far as nutrition goes, I mainly relied on Tailwind in my water, which is basically just like an electrolyte sugar mixture. On top of that, I leveraged gels quite a bit, and in particular these gels. I want to give a shout out to Unived. They supplied these elite gels for me for this race, and they worked out awesome. They're a lot easier to kind of drink rather than eat. On top of gels and Tailwind, I also ate a lot of rail food at the aid stations and when I met up with my crew. Mainly, I was looking for tortilla wraps with avocado in them. Those were awesome. I also had a lot of potato chips and salty foods like that. And then I ate like a whole tube of Pringles when I met up with my crew. All right, moving on. Pat and I ran together through the dark hours, and we actually bumped into this giant porcupine climbing up a tree. Scared the crap out of me because it was like cackling in the woods and I didn't know what it was. Pat started to feel some ankle issues. I think he had some knee and ankle issues as he went on, and his pace started to slow down a little bit. We were both getting a little bit wonky at this point. Both of our heads were kind of in the clouds and we were talking a lot of gibberish. Okay, mile 48, aid station 8. I finally get to meet up with my pacer Dave and get access to my drop bag once again. My voice started to get a little raspy at this point, and I don't know why. I think it was maybe a little dehydration and like a mixture of all the sugar I was taking in was kind of wearing away the back of my throat. After aid station 8, Pat and I parted ways. He had his pacer, I had my pacer, and so I set off down the trail with Dave, and it was awesome to have Dave there. Downside is this is when my second low point kicked in. I hit a slump, a really bad one. Here we go. This is Dave. He's been pacing me for, 22 miles? We are at mile 76 on the Midstate Massive 100. I feel like a pile of hot garbage. So it's going well. My mind kind of went downhill and my pace came down to a crawl. At this point in the race, there were a lot of road miles and they were wearing on me, man. The roads were really hilly. I couldn't even deal with going uphill anymore. I was sick of it. Fortunately, Dave was there to like pull me out of that gutter. He kept me motivated. He kept pushing me to keep going. I felt bad because it was pretty cold out at this point. I could tell Dave was getting cold, but he just wasn't complaining about it. So we got to aid station 9. This was a quiet aid station, so there was no one cheering because it was kind of in a residential neighborhood. But the good thing here is they had broth, like hot broth, vegetable broth, and this really hit the spot for me. It was, salty, warm. It was a cold night, so I was really happy to have that. This was actually the furthest distance that Dave had ever signed up for. I knew he could do it, but 36 miles was actually going to be his personal best distance. So he was pretty excited about that. And we were watching the miles go on our watches as we went. Really for him to hit that goal, it was pretty exciting. But yeah, those road miles were killing me. Those hills were killing me. I hated being on the road, and when I hit little sections of trail, it was a nice relief. However, some flat road miles were welcome because it let me catch up on my pace a little bit. So I was really struggling. This probably took me like well over 3 hours to get through. And I was just watching my pace drop on my watch, my goal times slip away into the abyss. I learned in Vermont, I needed to adjust my expectations. And I knew at this race, this was my low point. I knew I was watching myself at my low point and that I was going to come out the other side eventually. The thing about hundreds is there's so much time to recover. You can recover within the race. So when I hit this low point, I knew that I would come out this other side eventually. I just had to keep fighting. I adopted this new method of running where I would tilt my hat down like this so I couldn't see the road in front of me. And that way I wasn't able to see the hills coming. So I would just look at my feet and force myself to keep running. Oddly enough, this method of staring at my feet and forcing my body to work was working. Dave, my pacer, kept yelling out our pace after every mile and it was getting faster and faster. He'd yell out, "Dude, we just did an 11-minute mile." And that was exciting for us because it was bringing the average pace of the whole race down. And I was actually starting to get closer to my goal time. This momentum momentum kept building up and the excitement kept me moving. I got my second wind. I was actually running again. And Dave kept that positivity going, yelling out the paces and getting ahead of me and making sure I had a goal and motivation. At aid station 12, we got to meet up with our crew for the first time, Kelly and Adrian. They had hot soup for me. They had ginger beer. They had Pringles, and they had smiling faces and a big flashing sign that said, "Go Team Dave." So that was pretty awesome. It was very excited to see them. I knew my pace was getting better, so I wanted to keep moving. I didn't want to spend too much time sitting at an aid station. Boy, when the sun came up, it was a game changer. Trails became a lot easier to navigate. It got a little bit warmer and just generally a happier vibe. I like night running and all, but like 12 hours of that can get old fast.
How you feeling, Dave?
Yeah, buddy.
Oh yeah, look at that camera work.
At aid station 13, and again my crew was there. I was also pleasantly surprised that my wife showed up a little early, and she met us there at aid station 13 as well. It was good to see some familiar faces and get a big hug from my wife. Definitely made me feel a lot better, made me feel human again. I think I threw down some muffins they had there. Dave at this point had hit his distance PR, so we high-fived over that. That was pretty cool. And really at this point in the game, it was kind of a blur. I really don't remember a whole lot what was going on. I just remember looking at my feet and the sound of them shuffling along the ground. So we finally arrived at aid station 14, and this is where I'd be dropping off Dave and picking up my wife to pace me. The last 13 miles of the race was actually really rugged. The trails were super rocky. There wasn't a lot of hills, but they were very technical. And on tired legs and beat up feet, it was pretty rough. My wife is actually not really a trail runner either. This was her first time, I think, trail running. She's a great runner and she's very fit, but she struggled a little bit on the technical sections, and I felt pretty bad because I just kept hearing her twist her ankle behind me, and she was trying to stay positive, but I could tell she was struggling a little bit.
Here we are, 95 miles in, I think, or 96. I'm still running. You really want a belt buckle. What do you want to say?
I want to go home and sleep.
It was great having my wife there. Right off the bat, she had a big smile on her face and she was super enthusiastic. She had music playing and she was yelling at me to keep moving, and it was exactly what I needed at mile 90 of this race. She definitely had me moving and brought my spirits up a lot. There's one more final climb that was really a butt kicker. I saw some runners going uphill and it was like, oh. At this point on the trail, I actually passed a couple of runners and that gave me a little bit of a burst of energy. So at mile 95, I was like looking at my watch like, holy crap, this is really gonna happen. And really up until now, at this point, it was hard to fathom that I was actually gonna finish a 100 miler. And then we hear it, the music in the distance, the finish line music, people cheering. I could see the finish line. I could see the cones lining the finish line corridor, and running up, I'll never forget the moment, just like the music playing and people clapping, and the experience is something I will never forget.
Yeah, great job. Welcome to the finish line.
Well done, young man.
Thanks, man.
I got through the finish line and shook the hand of the race director and hugged Kelly and Adrian and hugged my wife, and it was like, I couldn't believe I had accomplished this. I can't believe my body had let me do this. I ran 100 miles from New Hampshire to Connecticut. How many people in the world have done that? So I crossed the finish line at 26 hours and 47 minutes, landing myself in 9th place overall. Not too bad. Once I figure out how to get this thing mounted to a real belt, I'm gonna start wearing it. I really don't think I could have asked any more from my body than it gave me that day. As a personal goal for me, this is huge. I can't believe I accomplished a 100-mile race. I hope I have more races like this in the future. My wife is already yelling at me for browsing through Ultra sign up so quickly just a few days after the race. So what's next for me? Recovery. I'm gonna give myself plenty of time to recover. I'm gonna try to let my legs fully heal up. I don't want to damage anything. So overall, an amazing experience. I feel like I didn't share everything I could in this video. So if you have more questions about it, definitely comment down below and ask whatever you want. It was a great overall race, and I can't believe it was a first-year event because it was well put together and executed. They did a great job with the aid stations and with support, and even with the maps that they provided. That's all I got for today. Definitely subscribe down below and give me a thumbs up if you thought this was a helpful video or at least entertaining. Thanks again for watching. Have a great day.